Today we are in Omro, Wisconsin, and we are at the Omro Junction and Union Cemetery. I found a picture on the Thanatos archive, an old vintage picture of a young man who had kind of a sad look, and looking further into it, a very sad story. A story where he drowned and no one would help him. Let's talk about it. It happened back in 1904, and I'm going to read you the article, the short article that was published in the newspaper. And the headlines, "Drowned in Bathing. Oshkosh boy meets death Sunday afternoon near Omro. Jesse Dyer, son of Mr. and Mrs. David Dyer, 216 Elm Street, in town of Rushford, with a party of boys when fatality occurred." Jesse Dyer, the 16-year-old son of Mr. and Mrs. Dyer, was drowned while in bathing at Deal, near Omro Sunday afternoon between 1 and 2 o'clock. The lad had gone to Rushford Saturday to visit his aunt, Mrs. Eliza Lannon, and in company with 8 other boys, went with the farmer to the river to go swimming. They had been in the water some time when young Dyer, who was a good swimmer, called out for help. One young lad tried to help him, but without success. It is claimed that there were men standing on the bank of the river who could have done so, that is, help, but who made no attempt to assist the drowning boy. It is thought he was taken with cramps, as no other reasonable explanation can be given for the accident. The boys, after the drowning, notified neighbors, and a search was made for the body. The parents were also visiting in the town of Rushford Sunday, and they were soon informed of the accident. Mr. Dyer was among those who went to search for the body, and it was recovered easily with almost the first attempt. It was in water about 7 feet deep. A coroner's jury was impaneled to view the remains and adjourned to today to take testimony. The young man had been employed until Saturday night at the J.I. Clark Carriage Company, and he was a painter. He is survived by his parents, and both being younger than he, Edna, sister, and a brother, Leo Dyer. The funeral will occur Tuesday at 1 o'clock from the home of his grandmother, Mrs. Robert Schufelt, in Omro. Reverend William Rollins of the Algoma Street M.E. Church of this city will officiate, and a special car will leave Oshkosh for Omro at 12:15 Tuesday afternoon. The remains will be interred at Omro Junction Cemetery. Here is his grave. Jesse E. Dyer. Born October 9th, 1888, died July 10th, 1904. And it's kind of hard to read that. And there's Edna May. 1869 to 1927, so I guess that would have been his sister, right? Didn't we refer to his sister as Edna? And over here we have, looks like the parents, Lorena and Fred. Whoops, there we go. Lorena died in 1946, and Fred passed much earlier in 1935. Well, hold the horses. This is not the father of Jesse Dyer. This is not David, not the husband of Lorena. Well, Deb, our ancestry helper, did a little digging, and sure enough, of course, we see she remarried here. And Deb found a short article outlining what happened, and it's even sadder. And as many times that happens after a death of a child, young man, family just breaks apart. In many cases is destroyed, and some or all just go downhill. And that's what happened here. So I'll read it. This morning, Mrs. Lorena Dyer was granted a divorce from her husband, David Dyer, of this city, who is said to be a paralytic on the ground of cruel and inhumane treatment. She alleged that her husband had threatened to strike her and frequently attempted to do so, although he was unable to leave the chair without assistance. Her daughter, Miss Edna Dyer, testified to similar facts, all of which attempted attacks were alleged to have occurred within the last 2 years, since which time Mr. Dyer has been an invalid. And this is interesting. It closes by saying, Judge Burnell, in granting the divorce, made the statement that the case was rather dubious in regard to the nature of the allegations. Dyer, that is David Dyer, was not present in court in person or by attorney. So that's very interesting. Well, you can imagine the father went completely downhill. I mean, he's the one who found Jesse's body. Can you imagine? And within a couple years or so, maybe 3, he was turned into a paralytic, as it says. And you can imagine the stress in the household, and he was going downhill. And I'll bet it was a combination of abusive behavior, but you have to wonder at the same time, was there abandonment? You see that Lorena married within 2 years after all of that happened and before the death of David. So you have to wonder, well, it was probably a combination of those things I mentioned, and you have to throw in the abandonment. But the third component, another man, perhaps in the wings that just started to develop, and of course the vulnerability and the woman very unhappy, and then another guy is allowed to enter the picture. Well, that's the story. Very sad story. And what's really sad is David is buried here at the same cemetery. He's all by himself. That's the story. Very sad story, this young man. No one would help him. Well, that was what caught my attention to this short story, I think, and also the fact that we have a picture of Jesse, and it's from the Thanatos archive. That's how I first learned of the story. So just imagine this guy standing by the river watching this poor guy drown. Anyway, I thought I'd share it with you. Yeah, we have his picture and we have a short story to remember him. He died too young, doing what he loved. But nobody knows what really happened. Could have been a cramp, who knows? He went down and nobody helped him. Well, one kid tried, but the rest just watched apathetically. All right, gang, that's it for today. Off to the air show. Rest in peace, Jesse Dyer.